Chris, welcome to the Six Figure Coach podcast. I'm excited. We just spent 20 minutes chit-chatting and talking business before diving in, so I'm excited to officially get started here.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to be on. It's really cool to be here. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So there's so much we could talk about, but I would love to just hear from you what you most want to walk away with from our time together today.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think for me, not that I've got it all figured out. I certainly do not. There's a lot of things I'm still very much actively working on through the Hive and still, watching a lot of recordings and working through it. But I think for me, the biggest thing I've been struggling with is just, the conversions of clients and getting more clients in the door, filling up my pipeline. I've done client surge once well, second time a little half-assed because I think I did a little too much. I did a little fast, and then I should have put a little bit more time and thought into it. But that's sometimes I'm just very much a ready, fire, aim kind of person, so that's fine. Learn, live and learn. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And I, when you and I were talking offline a little bit about that. Thing that I get a lot, which is, oh my God, I love you. You're great. Everything you talk about is so awesome. Blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, yeah, but I don't actually want to pay you for it, or I don't have the money to pay for it, or, so on and so on and so on. And, I'm trying to be better with the tactics of, talking to people and closing better. I'm certainly not a stranger to it. I've been doing it my whole life, out of necessity. This is the second business I've owned. Yeah. And I slid into the business development role at my previous company simply because my partner hated doing it. And so it was like, well, somebody's got to do it, so I'll do it. And just basically, like everything, I learned trial by fire. I went to school for filmmaking and all that, and then, became a business owner, and everything's been learned by doing. So there's definitely a lot of things I know I can improve on, for sure.
But it sounds like a theme, at least over the summer, and maybe it's carrying through. And what I'm hearing is there are 2, maybe 3 layers to it. One is people who come in for a discovery session have a version of I'm not ready yet, whether that's I can't quite afford it, or the business isn't quite in the right place, or let me go and get more clear and then I'll come back and work with you. Mm-hmm. There's potentially also, I don't want to say intimidation factor, but it could be an intimidation factor because you have it together, right? I'm thinking about another Hive member, Talita. Shout out to Talita.
She's awesome.
Been on the show a couple of times. We're actually tracking her progress this year. Yeah. And this is something that she bumps up against because Talita has had a goal of being in the Olympics, right? Since she was 10 years old, 8 or 10. So she's very committed to self-care, fitness, goal setting, high achievement. And so often she hears like, oh, you're awesome. I could never work with you because you're too good at it. Does that land for you at all, Chris? I wonder how often that comes up.
That's a really interesting perspective. I never thought about it like that because I don't think I've ever been told it in that way, but because I just don't. It's okay. So I am confident in myself, and while I go through self-doubt, like I think every human being does, but I don't think about myself in that way of like, I just do what I do because these are things I just love doing. I mean, this is me. Like I always tell people that I'm like the person you see that puts out all that stuff. Like people who know me, like just go, well, that's just Chris being Chris. Like there is no difference between the things I put out publicly and, my normal life. Although my wife would probably have a different perspective
right.
on that.
Is she available? Maybe we'll do a bonus episode.
Yeah, I'll bring her. We'll have to bring her in. But she, but that's a very interesting statement. So you got me, like right away, you've got me like thinking like about that. I never thought about it like that ever.
Right. Because you hear a lot like, you're killing it. You're so awesome. I love what you do. There's like people are fans.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I love Van Morrison. I'd never take singing lessons from him. I'd be terrified.
To be like, the reason why I started playing guitar in the first place was because of Ace Frehley and Eddie Van Halen. And I'm like, right. You're kidding me? Like, if you had ever told me like, oh, you could take guitar lessons with them, I'd be like petrified,
Yeah. Yeah. So that there could be something there.
Okay.
right?
That's
And I'd love
interesting.
us to talk more about that, because
Sure.
what I'm not saying here is you got to dim your light, Chris.
Right.
You got to be more approachable. But I have an idea for you that I'd love to propose.
Would
But
love it.
overall, what it sounds like is there's an urgency gap for preventing more people from hiring you sooner. Is that accurate?
No, I'd say that is very accurate, and I have been told. So something else I've been told by, I guess, a couple people in my circle of, peoples who know me well. Some of them have said that they think that maybe you were talking about like that I am going over maybe people's heads with the sense of like when I left my other company, just simply, honestly, to break it down, I was just ready to do something new after being a producer and film and video for 20 years. I'm always a creative. I love it. It's why I did that. And I will always be the creative. I was done with that as an industry whole, like doing video every single day. And I wanted to do something else. I was just ready.
Yep.
And so I set out to do this, and I said, I really want to coach. I want to mentor. I want to be a consultant. Like, I want to help people. It's something I've done my whole life. And I really feel like I felt like I could be really good at this. Like, I just naturally love doing it. And I love talking to people. I love helping people. And I'm like, I think I could do this, and I can monetize this. I could turn this into a business. And that was my plan. That's how I started it. And everything's been trial by fire since. And I know what I know. And I was trying to figure out things that people have told me, which I did interviews very early on before you and I even met about learning about Spark interviews. I started doing that before that of like, what do people want most from me? And a lot of things that came out consistently was, I'd love to learn how to put myself out there like you do, like be out there more, have the confidence, have all that stuff. And I recognize that as personal branding. I mean, back, nobody really called it personal branding then. And, now it's become sort of like the hot buzzword of like, 2020 and on. So I was like, well, you know what? I know that stuff like the back of my hand. It's great. And I love doing it. And if that's what people want to learn from me, then I would love to share that with everybody, as well as the business, just in the general of like running a business and, how do you do this and do that? So that was my blend. So I started leading with more of this personal branding coach. What do you do? Well, I'm a personal branding coach. So now though, I've started slipping in I'm a business and personal branding coach because of the feedback that I've gotten now of people saying, maybe you're going over people's heads and they don't understand what the hell you're talking about when you say personal branding.
Right. Or why do I need it? Especially, again, if we go back to this, I'm not Chris syndrome. Let's call it Van Morrison syndrome for today's conversation. Is
that
okay with everybody?
I dig that. Yeah.
Right. Which is, you're really good at this. I do not see myself as being good at this. So let me wait until I'm confident enough to own a personal brand. Mm-hmm. I've actually, and I'm a business coach. I don't meet very many people who say they want a personal brand. That's not their words for it either. No,
you're right. And that's the thing I feel like I'm trying to figure out the right mix of what they're sort of calling it, which is a lot of times turns out to be, I don't know how to put myself out there. Yeah. Or it really starts too with a lot of like, I don't know how to get more clients. And I don't know how to get more clients. Then it becomes a mindset thing. And this is what I uncover. Usually the first thing I'm doing with people when I work with them one-to-one is we're usually doing a few weeks of mindset stuff because it is a lot of switching and getting to the point of like, well, you want more clients. Well, what are you doing? And then I'm looking at LinkedIn and I'm looking at all these things and I'm like, you're a ghost. Like you're invisible. Yes. Like I get it. And you've got your awesome network of people. And believe me, I built business that way too. Old school of calling and doing what you do and one-to-ones. Like, yes, awesome. You've got to do that. But your online presence or the other things that you're doing, like you're invisible. No one knows who you are. Like, who are you as a person? Like, what do you stand for? What are your values? Like, yeah, you want business. We all want business, but like, like you're just, and that's usually the step, but there's a lot of movement to get to that point of, because you've been kind of doing the same thing, like you're doing the permission granted, program workshop, like, and I say this all the time and I'm like, never ask for permission. Just do this. Like, this is all the punk rock stuff that like I always bring in from.
Right. And again, great. Yeah, Chris, that's great for you. Look at you. It's easy for you. It's not easy for me. Okay.
I know.
I have a couple of ideas. And so let's just see if you want to take the conversation in this direction. two big opportunities. Number one, hyper niching.
Mm-hmm.
As a personal branding coach, like you could see that I struggle with this too, right? And I probably need to follow my own advice.
Right.
But if you're a coach, you should be in the hive. If you're a coach and you want to lead with your values, I am the mentor for you. But from the outside looking in, if you don't know me, and if you're a relationship coach and you don't know me, I'm no different from any of the other experts out there. But if I went all in on, if you're a relationship coach with values, right, I am the mentor for you. Like it would feel like the skies parted, right? When you discovered me, it'd be an easy yes. So maybe I'm talking to myself more than you, but I like, that's a conversation I've been having lately. Like, am I niched enough? So I think if you'd be open to talking about how you can begin by hyper niching, and it's the hyper niching that then opens up more opportunities later for you to have enough street cred where you're serving anybody, right? Hyper niching, and then really thinking about naming the transformation in their language rather than this, what can be often nebulous. It's either nebulous or it's nice to have, or it's something you have to be established enough to own, which is personal branding.
Right.
So can we go down that road?
Yeah, no, okay. I'd love that. This is awesome. So I feel like you're like 1,000% inside my head, because this is the stuff that I think about all the time. So
Right. Well, the thing I was thinking about it earlier, and then offline before we began recording, you shared that you taught recently at a cannabis convention. And I thought, oh my gosh, if he was a branding coach for cannabis growers or cannabis product makers, you know how easy it would be to find clients?
Right. No, exactly. Well, that's, believe me,
or
that's
elementary
not lost
school
on me.
teachers, or like name the industry.
Right.
That part doesn't matter. So if you think about all of the people that you've served, if you were forced today to hyper niche into a specific market, what market would you choose?
It's an excellent question. So let me back it up just a little bit before I give the supreme answer. But when I started, my first inclination, and I don't think it's a big leap, considering that's where I spent my time for 20 years, was in video film. So, but I put it under the, listen, I love working with creators. So to me, that's, video, photo, design, podcasters, really anybody in creative services, or creative professionals. And because it's what I know really well. I feel like I can connect to people. I understand what it's like, and I understand, how difficult it can be, especially if you're very introverted and, putting yourself out there and networking and building relationships to find a business. I understand how hard it can be. And I can relate a lot. And, but I can tell you that, through all the different things, that it's not impossible to get the business, and it's just work with what you have, work on your strengths. So that was my initial, what I'm going to focus on. But then I started putting that out there, and I felt like what was happening is everybody else but creators were kind of coming out to me. So I'm getting mortgage professionals. I'm getting, all kinds of other professional services, whether they're owners or, they're in the sales role, which is fine. I'm getting that. And I got some creators, but I got to tell you, if you look at my book of business right now, it is it's a melting pot.
Yeah.
It's like everything.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not trying to say everybody can work with me. I don't try to you help me with which is, creative business owners. I put it in there, but I like what you're saying, where you're going, because this is where I feel like that I am struggling with this because I love working with people like we all do, right? We're coaches, man. We want to coach, but I like the niching down and trying to figure out, well, where can I focus the power of, people who want it more?
Yeah.
The cannabis thing is really cool. And I'm learning that industry and learning a lot. There's a lot of layers to it. And it's complicated. I mean, it's there, and a lot of people need help there, but it is a slightly more layered than than some of the other, business owners or
Right.
businesses I
Especially
work
if
with.
you don't come from that industry, there's a learning curve for you. Yeah.
Big time,
Yeah,
big
I
time.
understand that.
And I'm fine. And I'm, and I've been working on it, but it does take a while because you've got to, listen, it's a trust thing. Like people want to know, like, are you for real, or are you just here to list, like, make money
Right.
off of us? And
Right.
you get kicked out of the
Yeah,
community
totally.
pretty fast.
Okay. So so there's a difference though, Chris, between like creators is not a niche.
I know.
So
I
let's
know
just
that's
play
the
the
problem.
game. Like,
Yeah,
and you don't have to commit to it,
sure.
right? But let's just play the game. Like if you had to focus on a too specific niche, like you said, mortgage professionals, that's specific,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
again, that's not a suggestion, it's an example. But
Right.
if you had to really go in on the first layer of your audience, what would you pick?
Wow. Yeah, it's who would I pick? I mean, it's like, I don't know, the problem is I love
I
doing them
know.
all. I know, and this is the issue with, and this I feel like has been a big problem with me because I love doing it all. But you know, video film for me is something that just comes so, like, it just comes so easy because I know that business so inside out, and I
Yeah.
understand, and it's all very similar to like photo to, even, I'm working with some podcasters, and because it's like, I get it, and I'm getting at the point where it's like, hey, I have a podcast and I want to turn my podcast into a business. I don't know how to take it from, hobby to, like, now I want to monetize it, make it into a business. So it's
Right.
like,
Okay. So I've heard
it's all
three possible niches:
it's
video,
all fun.
photo, and podcasting.
Designers, because just creative, I like
You're not
talking to
answering
people.
my question.
I know. This is like, because I'm having a hard time doubling down on one of these, which is probably my problem. It's the root of my problem, I'm sure.
It just makes it so hard.
You know what? It's all fun, and that's the it's all
I'm
fun.
with you.
Yeah.
And this is the pot calling the kettle black here, because my niche is I help coaches who aren't business coaches. And yet here you are, right? So but that's the point.
Yeah,
Right?
no, it
When
is
you're
the
really
point.
clear about your niche, your niche gets broader much more quickly. Your client base gets broader much more quickly.
Right.
But I'll tell you, I see how much simpler my marketing life would be if I did go all in on relationship coaches.
Right.
Right? So as an exercise, if you had to go all in, would it be film producers?
I mean, I would probably call it more like, let's just call it video production owners, like
Video production owners. That's what
something
they call
like
themselves?
if for the most part, like video production agency owners kind of thing, or
Okay.
production studio owners. I don't know.
Oh my God, your energy just went out the window. You're so not stoked about that.
Well, because I'm trying to, I'm like, it's so weird, man. It's so weird. I know, like, so, like, I actually get envious of people like, like Laser, because I'm like, oh man, they got it down. Like, they got it down, and I love that. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I had that. And I know I could get it. I just having a different kind of like, Benno, like, rocking that. Like, I love that. And so many of the other people, like, like Bex, and I watch all of them, and I'm like, man, I am so, like, it's so inspirational for me. And I'm like, they're so in, and I'm like, I just having a hard time. I guess that's my biggest problem. I'm having a hard time figuring out who I want to work with, because they're all awesome, and I have so much joy out of working with all the different, like, I like working with the podcasters. I like working with the film and video people. I like working with, the photographers and the designers that I have right now. Like, I really enjoy those groups because I feel like there's instant connections there, because immediately when they start telling me what their problems are, I'm like, I know exactly like how to help you. Like, I'm right in on it because I've been in all those spots.
Yeah.
I know the feelings.
Okay. So I just had an aha.
Okay.
Because, I'm talking about my own, like, oh, my life would be so much easier. But hold up, like, I've been doing this long enough to be able to serve a broader audience. But when I started, when I moved from being a business coach for actors and into this broader coaching market, the people I mentored started with actors who wanted a side business. That was the niche. That's very hyper niched.
Wow.
The program was called Your Other Dream Job. And
I like that.
The positioning around it was, acting is your real dream job. Wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to wait tables anymore or like have a bunch of gigs? Then it evolved into actors who want to be coaches. And that's where I got my street cred, right? That's where I really fine-tuned my processes. That's where I informed what it is I coach today. So I flew my plane through the eye of a pin needle. And then on the other side, it gets broader. So I'm sharing this to say, I know from experience, and I'm glad I remembered this, right? By focusing on a tiny niche right now, you'll be able to serve the masses sooner than by focusing on the masses right now.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Right? Because we talk about this inside the Hive just around client search. Part of the client search process is to fall on your face in discovery sessions a lot. It's how you get good at them. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
We're testing our
100%.
process.
Yeah.
So by niching way down, if you all could see me, I'm like really speaking with my hands here.
Yeah, I love it.
By really niching down, it makes client attraction so much easier. It turns their experience from, wow, Chris is awesome. One day when I'm personal brand worthy, I'm going to work with Chris, to holy crap. I own a video production company and he helps video production company owners bring in more business. I'm in. So it's, instead of a nice to have, it's a have to have. You work with those people, you iron out your process, you get street cred. Their friends who aren't video production agency owners see them thriving, and suddenly a wider variety of people come in naturally, and your niche evolves. Your marketing, right, evolves as your client base broadens, but you gotta go narrow first. If you can tolerate it, that would be my biggest piece of advice for you today.
Okay. I like this.
So I'm not going to
I need to hear this. This is the stuff I need. I need to hear this. So
okay.
This is it. I this is what I do to other people. So this is, I need to hear this.
So I'm not going to make you commit today, but let's get really clear on the date, your drop dead date for when you're going to commit on your hyper niche. Let's experiment with it for 90 days. Okay. So when are you going to hyper niche? And that'll start your 90-day experiment. And then I want to get clear on what steps will you take in order to land on the hyper niche that lights you up. Let's talk about that right after the break. Chris, like I said, I'm not going to just make you say, all right, fine. Now I work with mortgage professionals. Thanks a lot, Dallas. I'm so happy I came on the show. Wah, wah. But if you had to create an action plan, right, aligned with the way that you work to help you land at a hyper niche that we can then experiment with, what would the action plan be?
So I know for me, what I would probably do, because what I tell everybody else to do, is I would sit and I'd write down a list of the things that the people I love working with, like the industries, let's just call them, that I really enjoy working with, that excite me. That's where I would start. And then I would begin to sort of like, probably then from that point, then grade them on level of excitement.
Yeah.
But seriously, because I listen, I want, I want to help people. I want to be into it, and it's a reason why I even like left Gray Sky, because I wanted to do more of the things I wanted to do and not be so boxed in as, video production producer. Like I wanted to just be like, I want the freedom to do the things I want to do.
Yes. Okay. So what if you made a list of all of the people that you've loved working with so far, and maybe even the people who didn't hire you, and it was such a bummer because you knew
I was just thinking that
you could soar with them.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking about re-looking at the people that wound up not working with me and being like, oh man, I was really hoping they would go with me and they didn't. And which is fine. But that's it is worth looking at that list too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
and then we'll see what that, like, how narrow can you get? Just as a game, right? So we're going to look at the list. How narrow can you get? And I would rate like excitement, which you mentioned, ease. Right. So you worked with someone named Jeremy, who's a mortgage professional. I'm making this up, right? Like I don't know, scale of 1 to 10, it was a 4 on excitement. Ease, it was a 6. And the results he got, it was kind of awesome. That was a 10. So it's a total score of 20. So if you rate each of these by more than one piece of criteria, it often gives you more perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
So the next step I would invite you to take is this list of people, whether they hired you or not, go back to each one of them and ask, in your own words, how would you finish this sentence? I reached out to Chris because I wanted to get better at blank. Or I reached out to Chris because I know I needed to blank. Let's find their words for personal branding.
And these are the people that that didn't wind up working with me, or is it just everybody?
The same list of people you were who excited you.
Gotcha. Got it.
Whether they worked with you or not. Now, remember, the ones who have worked with you, they're a little bit indoctrinated. So be careful. They'll probably use your words for things more than people who didn't end up hiring you.
Got it.
Great. So hopefully that will take us to a place where, all right, I'm going to try this experiment of hyper niching. And instead of a personal brand and business coach, it's going to turn into something like I help video production agencies put themselves out there to bring in more clients, whatever their words end up being.
Right. Whatever their words are.
Right. Okay.
So
what is the deadline for this assignment?
The deadline for this assignment is something I want to start right away. So because that's just how I am. Because now I'm like all jazzed up about this. I'm like, let's just go. So I would probably say I want to run this exercise. I'm actually going to run this exercise probably over the next day or two.
Okay.
For at least getting the grading and then doing that and then sending out this this communication.
Okay. So and then it's just a matter of hearing back from folks. But can you give me an update in a week?
Oh, yeah, it's easy enough. Yeah.
Okay, great. What, if anything, if you just check in with yourself, like what, if anything, might hold you back from this hyper niche experiment?
I think the only thing that would hold me back at this point, which is just it's all in my own head. It's just fear. That's all, or the fear of like saying, oh, I think I'm going to like this. And I get excited. And then I realize I don't like it. But then I'm like, but that's fine. You could always change. Like you're not like,
no one else is paying attention.
Really nothing. Yeah. No one cares. That's the thing. Like no one really cares. Exactly. No one's paying attention. I tell people that all the time. Like people pay attention, but they don't pay attention. They pay attention for like goldfish amount of memory, and then it's gone. So don't worry about that. So I just, it's just got to get over my own head trash of that. And that's it. That's really what it is. Okay. It's just head trash.
Yeah. And it is just an experiment. Like you don't have to stick with anything.
Right. Okay. Exactly. It's just an experiment, and that's totally fine. So I just, as long as I remember that and keep that, then the rest of the stuff is easy to just like tell it to go away.
Okay. Great. All right. So I'm excited to hear how that's going to go.
Me too.
Where you land. I'd like now to address this other piece, if you're open to it.
Let's do it.
Which is, what do you feel might be missing in your marketing to address the, wow, Chris is so awesome. I could never be that awesome.
Great question, because I never thought about it like that until you said the you're referring to the people being like kind of a little like almost like fearful of working with me because this is what we're
just not ready. It's like because they see you as
right, and they're just not ready. So it's interesting because I try to be very, very relatable and very down to earth about things, and just 100% just practice what I preach, which is being myself, I don't think I come off as somebody extraordinary. I just don't, I always tell, I wear it on my sleeve, rock, metal, punk, Star Wars nerd. Like I'm just like any other dork who goes and, and spends money on Star Wars like merchandise, the guy that goes to a record store and flips through records for 2.5 hours, and it's just who I am, and I try to be very, very much relatable to that, but while also sharing like my content of like talking about business and just where I'm come from, my experiences, it's what I've done. That's all my coaching is based on all the stuff that I've just done and lived through. I mean, that's it. I don't have these certifications or accreditations, and I just, that's it. So that's why I try. So it's just an interesting perspective, because that's something that I now would like to think about. Like, well, what am I doing that could be making people like,
no,
am I just
don't
too
think
much? Is it just too much?
No, do not take that away. Everybody listening, do not take that away from this conversation. That's not what I mean. I think it's maybe even leaning into your awesomeness even more, but there's a normalizing piece that's missing, right?
Okay.
I have 2 thoughts around this.
All right.
Number 1, narrate the fact that they don't think they're as awesome as you are. Not in those words. Can you imagine? Now, I know you're not as awesome as me, but let me teach you this anyhow, and good luck with it.
I know, because that just goes so much against like how I just am, because I just, I don't see myself that way at all. I mean, I just do what I do. It's really how I just get excited about stuff. Yeah.
But if we look at the feedback you receive, there's a theme here.
No, then
which
and you're right.
Putting you on a pedestal. Right? So it's just talking about that. So I'm going to make something up here. All right. Okay. You're doing a training about how to like ask for the sale. Right? And you teach it, and then you say, all right, so I know you might be watching this thinking like, yeah, Chris, that's easy for you. You're the let's rock guy. You have a lot of confidence. Right? I have 2 things to say about that. Number 1, who better to learn from? If you're not confident, who better to learn from than someone who is? Number 2, what I just taught you is not about confidence. If you follow the steps, 2 things will happen. Number 1, you'll see better results. And number 2, you will grow your confidence. You cannot wait to be confident before you move forward. It's the action that builds the confidence. So we just addressed that thought in their head. How does that land for you? Well, actually, I'm going to speak into it a little bit more. Inside the Hive, the foolproof webinar formula, the structure that I teach on how to deliver content is all about addressing the different types of learning styles. There's a certain type of learner, I don't even know if that's a word, but who is a bit of a yeah, but person. This is my husband. My husband, he's not negative, right? He's not trying to like ruin your life, even if some days it feels like that. The way he processes information is to poke holes in the process. The way he really understands it is to be like, yeah, but have you thought about X? Or yeah, but how does that apply in this sort of special circumstance? So it's the 6S system inside the Foolproof Webinar formula, but that last S is a special circumstance. So when you're delivering content, right, in all of your marketing, that special circumstance that I invite you to speak into is the, yeah, Chris, but I'm not you. That just helps people feel seen and heard, and it creates a permission structure for them to apply what you're teaching or to hire you. Okay, so how does that land for you?
No, actually, I like that. Because I'm thinking this through as you're saying all this.
I see it.
Yeah, it's like the little hamster wheel in my head is spinning. You know what? It's interesting because I like what you're saying. I never realized that, and I have caught myself saying it a few times. Of saying, listen, you don't have to don't worry about being me, worry about being yourself. And I've said that phrase a few times, but the way you're framing this out now, the way you're laying it, the way you've told me it, and it makes more sense now this way. Because I don't think I've ever really thought about, like I said, I never thought about it that way, that could be the thing that's disconnecting.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, like lean into it more and actually bring it up more, because it's probably what people are really thinking.
Yes.
More than I have even thought, obviously, based on this conversation. So
yeah. And it's just affirming where they're at. So for you to say, and I'm not saying you're saying this exactly, but just as an example, it's easy. Just go for it, right? Like, you can rock this. You've got it. For them, it's like, well, no, that is not my experience. Right. So now, like, there's a trust link. Like, I'm a fan, but I don't trust that what you're teaching actually works for me. So instead, saying, I could sit here and tell you how easy this is. And let's be honest, it is probably easier for me than you. I've been doing it a long time, and it's my passion. That's why I teach other people how to do this. So, like, don't compare yourself to me, but let's be honest. This is not going to feel easy the first 3 times you do it. But here's why it's important. Here's why it's important anyway. So we meet them where they're at instead of just trying to, like, root them on, because it feels dismissive. This is for everybody. The things we're naturally good at are likely the things you coach about.
Yeah.
So it's just easier for us than it is for others. And so by trying to sell your services, saying how easy your process is, that can almost work against you. Because your audience doesn't think it's easy, or they wouldn't be following you and thinking about hiring you.
No, it's a really good point. Like,
are you speechless right now for the first time ever?
I might be. Well, you know what? Like I said, this is something I've been I've been struggling with this. When you, what's the question? Hey, what keeps you up late at night, or what keeps you from sleeping? Well, this is it. I mean, as a business owner, I mean, you're never, you're always trying to figure out, well, what is this and what is that? And, even when it's working, you're still trying to, like, figure out, well, how do I get it to work better? And then, so I'm just like, to this point of, like, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the right things, but it just isn't like what is going on? Like, I get this feedback, I get all this stuff. I'm like, what is missing? What am I doing wrong? Like, this is, I just never thought about it this way. I really haven't. So yeah, I'm speechless.
I'm glad that we're coming at it from a different angle. Because I think as coaches, what we naturally want to do is cheer people on. And sometimes that energy is a mismatch with where they're at. So we can encourage them, right? And set them up to win, but it's not by only ever being positive and like, look at me, I can do it.
Yeah, it just becomes toxic positivity, which does nothing. So
right. There's another suggestion I have if you're open to it.
Let's keep going.
And that is storytelling and social proof often in your marketing. And again, I say let's totally lean in to this. Wow, Chris, you're awesome. I'm intimidated. Like, let's go there.
Right.
Lita, if you're listening, same thing. Flex your arms all the time. She's so strong, and like we can't play small. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is I'll use the example of closing the sale. Tell a story about Jeremy, the mortgage professional who got better at closing the sale, and use Jeremy as the case study instead of you. And you could even say, listen, like, I could tell you a lot of stories about me. In fact, I'll tell you one, but now let me show you how this worked for Jeremy, just in case you're worried that I have some sort of secret sauce that you can't learn. So more social proof is going to bridge that gap for folks as well. So let's say like social proof in the form of storytelling.
Yeah. No, that tracks.
Great.
I like that a lot, actually. That's actually really good. This is something I tell people. I tell other people this all the time. It's like, tell your story, share your experiences, like they're unique. I do the whole thing, and it's like, duh, Chris.
Yeah. I know. Like we're in it too deep to see it sometimes.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty much all the time. I mean, it's
true.
It just is, it's why you invest in people like yourself and, people.
And
It's why you do it, because you can't do it alone. You just can't.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I've got so far. I want to see if I've missed anything, and then I'd love to hear your takeaways from our conversation. We're going to experiment with hyper niching. You're going to make a list of the people who have lit your fire the most, whether they've hired you or not.
Right.
And they're going to inform for you what this hyper niche experiment might be around. You've given yourself a deadline of a week. And then let's just commit. We're recording this, everybody, the middle of September. So can you ride that out through the end of the year to gather enough information about how on track this hyper niche theory is?
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Those same people who light your fire are the ones you're going to ask to complete for that sentence completion piece, so that we can make the idea of personal branding and business coaching more concrete. And then to overcome this pedestal syndrome, Van Morrison syndrome, right? We called it.
Van Morrison syndrome.
We're going to just narrate the fact that, we're going to narrate the thoughts in their mind, right? And instead of talking about things being easy or using yourself as an example, we're going to validate the fact that for them it might be hard, which doesn't mean it's not worth doing and not learnable. And use client stories more to illustrate your the points you're getting across, so that they can see themselves in your process instead of separate from you.
Yeah, it all makes sense. I like it. It was good.
Cool.
This is exactly what I needed. It really is.
Great. All right. So what's your biggest takeaway from our conversation as we wrap up today?
Well, biggest takeaway was just, the self-realization or the realization of what you brought up, which is something I just never thought about, which was the Van Morrison syndrome type of thing. But yeah, once again, I don't see myself like that, but it is a thing I wasn't thinking of, is like, well, then how do other people see it? And that's, and not everybody, I'm sure, is going to vocalize it to me. So, I mean, every now and then I get that, but it's more, but it's probably more widespread than I even thought. So that's that's something that really kind of knocked me on my socks today.
Great.
The other component too is the niching down, which I feel like has been something that's been in the back of my head for a while. But just not committing to it. Yeah. And now I feel like, as I'm now starting year 2 of this company, it's something, it's part of the growth, and it's part of like, okay, hey, I did this, and this, and this. Now it's what's working, what's not working. And, and this is something that deep down inside, I just know I need to do it. I've been avoiding it. So this is now you basically saying, just stop avoiding it. And as we said, it's an experiment. So doesn't mean it can't change. And at the end of the day, who really cares if it does change? Like, this is why you do things. You got to experiment, see what works. When it doesn't work, that's right. You change it and you just move on. Like, you can't dwell on it.
Great.
Well, get a lesson learned.
I had so much fun in our conversation today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, me too. This was awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. And this is great. I'm really happy. So thank you so much for having me on today.
You're welcome. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If any of this resonated for you, think about how you can get even more specific with your niche and where there might be a gap in your marketing, helping people see themselves as capable enough to apply what it is you offer them. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.